Good evening, Broncos country, and welcome to another Mile High Insiders podcast. I'm Thomas Hall, and tonight, my co-host, Luke Patterson's not going to be with us tonight. Unfortunately, he gets to take a well-deserved vacation, but instead, I'm going to have somebody really special, someone I loved watching when I was young, come join us tonight, talk a little football, the talented, the legendary Ken Lanier. Welcome to the show, Ken. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me. And it
Yeah.
looks like we're going to have a fun night, just going over things and talking about the old and talking about the new.
Yeah, I'm excited to be. And there might be some folks in the stream that are listening that don't, maybe they weren't around back in the 80s and early 90s to watch you play. They're newer Broncos fans. I just wanted to tell everybody a little bit about you, Ken. I mean, number one, you played for the Broncos for, I think, 14 seasons or 13 seasons. And for when you took over starting in 1982 full time, you didn't miss a game for 11 straight seasons. That is impressive. I just, that's Iron Man status. So not only were you're there every day, but from my perspective, you're one of the top 5 offensive tackles that have ever been in the orange and blue, and probably the best right tackle that's ever played for the Broncos. So I really appreciate you having here. It brings back some great memories. But so for some of the folks that are, that don't know how you got started, can you just give a little bit of how you got into football? Because I know you started out, you were a track star going to college. So how did you get to football?
Yeah, well, football, I'm from Ohio, so it was kind of big, in Ohio. My first year I went out, I think I was in the 9th grade, and you had to run around this tree, and, you go out, you come back. And the first time we did it, I said, this isn't for me, so I quit. I just couldn't handle that. So then the next year I came out and, I played, and that was in junior high school and then high school. So, it started all there, but I was interested in track. That was my thing. I wanted to be a shot putter. And, I had a dual scholarship. I had Florida State as well as a few other schools that wanted me, but Florida State had a good track team. So that's how I ended up at Florida State, was because of their track team. So I did both. I did at the last minute. I told the coach that I wanted to play football too. And at the time, that was Bobby Bowden's second year. So he said, fine. So I had the understanding that I would do, track in the summer and football in the fall. So
nice.
No spring ball for me, because I saw what that did to people. And my brother was, he went to Kent State, so I was familiar with the mat room and the conditioning, they called it.
Yeah.
Where they kill you and bring you back to life, and kill you and bring you back to life. So that wasn't for me. I knew that, so I did track and football.
Yeah, yeah, and you shot put. You were basically a world-class shot putter, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, you could chuck the shot put quite a ways.
Yeah, I had the Ohio State record for 15 years or more. 65, I think it was 65-7, 7 inches. So yeah,
wow.
So I lived and breathed, throwing that shot put before school, after school. You named it.
Yeah. Well, you got your chance in the NFL. The Broncos took a chance on you in the 5th round. You got drafted into the Broncos, and then, I mean, the rest is really history. But you're one of the, what I would call the one of the underappreciated Broncos, I think, of all time. Like people can't go to your stats and like they can go back and look at like Simon Fletcher from the olden days and say, wow, he had a lot of sacks, but you had to watch you to really appreciate how well you played. Your starter for all 3 of those early Super Bowls. Unfortunately, that those were losses, unfortunately. And as a kid, that was like painful. And I can't even imagine, going to those games and not coming out victorious. So, but still getting there is a huge task. Starting as many times as you did, that was amazing. So you're very underappreciated from my book when it comes to Broncos. But we're going to talk a little bit of maybe about your career so people can understand what it was like playing for the Broncos back then. I mean, you went through 2 strike seasons
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
80s,
The
but
80s,
you
yeah.
still go ahead.
Yeah, 2 strike seasons, and people don't realize how much, we laid the foundation for today's athletes,
Yeah.
all the stringent rules they have and times and the money increases. And, it was because of what we did as far as striking and trying to get a piece of the pie. And,
Yeah.
it's like one of those where we were and are unsung heroes because everybody looks at all the money that everybody's making, and they look at us and they're like, well, you'll be all right. But
It was tougher back then. You didn't get paid as much, and I can't even imagine you get drafted and the next year you're all ready to start, and then that first strike happened. And what was that like to be ready to go for that season, and then, oh, sorry, we're gonna sit out for a little while?
I mean, it was for a good cause, and I felt that back then. I mean, you had the option of crossing the line or holding out, and I choose to hold out too. Because it was for the benefits to try to get better playing conditions and better money for us. And we did accomplish some things, and we did lay some groundwork for what's happening now.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they maybe they don't know, but they should appreciate all of your efforts from back in the day for sure. So, I'm gonna say hi quick to David McIlrath coming in, saying good evening, Broncos country. Have a great show. Thank you, David, for stopping by. If you have any questions, get them in. Ken Lanier's here. He's got a wealth of knowledge with football, old Broncos days, and we're gonna get into talking a little bit about current Broncos too. And an offensive lineman looking at the current offensive line, you're gonna have some good insights. So, but maybe we'll jump into a little bit of the current Broncos, and then we can pop back into some other questions from the playing days. But we're sitting here just after free agency.
Okay.
Just got done with the frenzy, they call it, the free agency frenzy. Picked up a few players. And what's your take on the big 3 that they signed this last week?
Well, we got the tight end that the system much needed. Somebody that can block and it's just durable and looks like good work ethics and everything. And we picked up a safety, and we're used to having strong hitting safeties. Bronco countries, that's what we thrive on, is having that safety that can hit somebody and make things happen. And we also picked up the linebacker too. With the 2 from Frisco, they had some injury issues, but we got them at a price that was good for what the quality of work that we're hoping that we get from them. And it's always a gamble, even if you're healthy, you can always go out on the field and something happen, which that's kind of what happened with the linebacker. I remember watching the game when he got hurt. Something big happened. He jumped up and ran on the field, but when he jumped, he came back down and he tore his Achilles. So, but he's a heck of a linebacker, and that's going to help because with Vance's defense, it just seems like he has a way of making defenses that are going to just be like the old Orange Crush defenses. Denver was built on defense. We won the Super Bowl 50, and we won it off the defense. We've always had strong defenses, and hopefully this will continue.
Yeah. And you're talking about safeties. You played with two of the greats. I mean, Steve Atwater's in the Hall of Fame, and also you played with Dennis Smith.
Right. Me and Dennis were the same class. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you? I can't remember. Was Billy Thompson there your first year, or did he retire before that?
I think I got a year or 2 with Billy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Billy, Tom Jackson, Randy was there. So,
So the got a piece of the Orange Crush, and then you got some of the later stuff with Joe Collier was doing with some of that defense in the 80s. So it's impressive. So just wanted to grab Al Law. Thanks for coming in. I'm glad to see I didn't get a chance to read your comment, but appreciate you. Ernie Mays jumping in as well. So, great to see you. All-Star says that, he first started following the Broncos in 84. So from afar, from Ireland. And he knows who you are. So that's great. We got people, Broncos country coming in from all over the world to check it out. So thanks for jumping in there. And Ernie's coming in, checking in. Saying go Broncos country, Bo Nix for 6. Hello, Thomas and Kenny Lanier, awesome player. So Ernie knows about you as well. So we got a few people that are excited that you're here, Ken, and I really appreciate it. So we got.
Being a Bronco, man, our fan base is just crazy insane. I mean, they're a loyal group of people that demand a fine product. But they still stick with you, They get mad, they get upset, but they have a reason to. So, you got to give them something to look forward to and something that they can turn on the TV on Sundays and not be looking through their friends.
Well, it was a rough go for a while. I mean, it's from my Broncos fandom that this stretch before they got their winning season last year and made the playoffs, that was the longest stretch I saw where there wasn't a really good team out there. So it was tough. And as an ex-player, when you're going through a slump like that, how do you kind of turn that around? Is there, what are some of the key things that you saw that this team has done to kind of turn that around and get to the winning ways?
Well, I think when they stabilized the front office, that really helped things. You gotta have a stable front office. And people making sound decisions. For a while there, we were all over the place, front office wise, and then that kind of transposed or trickled down to the players. You had to get it done, and then you have to find out what philosophy is going to work for your teams. Are you going to go with the proven player, or are you just going to dig deep and rely on your scouting people as far as scouting new talents and stuff? I mean, it seems like we always, for some reason, no matter who the coach was, but the Broncos always find an undrafted player that turns into something, and that's a testament to, being good scouting reports and looking beyond what's on top, looking underneath to see what makes people tick.
Yeah, I think we've missed one undrafted rookie free agent not making the team in 22 years or something like that. It was an impressive that kind of after the draft scouting, so to speak, has been very impressive with the Broncos.
And don't forget, Mecklenburg was the last one picked.
Yeah,
in his draft time, he was
Yeah, I remember 12th round draft choice. I talked to him too. I had him on Legends of Mile High back when I was doing that. He, talked to him about how he was able to make the team. And it's impressive. You get these late round picks that pan out, and that's really what the Broncos needed too, because they had missed on a lot of those kind of later round picks. And you need those to fill in your depth, but also you need a few to step up and be an impact player unexpectedly. And I think that was a big miss that they had in those last few years. But now we got Valet, who was a 7th rounder, was playing a lot. You got several of these drafts have really panned out. So I think
I was a 5th round pick myself.
That's right. Yeah.
Dan came in, it was a new system and everything. And they knew me from the Senior Bowl. So that's how I got here, basically. They knew what they were getting, and everything. But to answer Zachary's question, John came in 83, and that was my second, so that would be my 3rd year. So, it was interesting that, for a while there, when somebody's rushing you, and all of a sudden they would take off, and then we had to get used to, if somebody's rushing at you, and then they disappear, that meant John was on the scramble. So then you had to go chase your man down. Something was happening behind you can't really see, and so you had to react, and we were always constantly moving around because he was moving around. And I remember one time when John threw the ball and it went past my helmet, and I could hear the laces go past the helmet. It's like, that he had some steam on the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the strongest arms, if not the strongest in the NFL. I mean, I remember watching those days where he would sling that ball. It was just incredible accuracy and incredible speed and power behind that ball. So, yeah, thanks, Zach, for checking in. Appreciate you jumping on. I saw another question in there that I want to get to. I think it was Chase Wellner asked, well, who was the toughest defender you faced when you were playing?
Reggie White.
Reggie White. Okay. Yeah. I mean,
he had so many different tools in the toolbox. You know, he could power rush you. He can go upfield. You know, he can spin inside. You know, he was a handful.
Yeah. Well, Hall of Fame defensive lineman, probably, I mean, arguably one of the best to ever play defensive line for sure. And I mean, how many times do you remember? Was it you played him a few times, or was it?
I only remember one time that we played him, and that was at Mile High.
Okay.
And he was with Green Bay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was pretty much later in your career then, because he was like one of the big first free agent guys that went and changed team, big name free agent players. So that must have been a little bit later.
Generals, I think USFL.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reggie White, man, going up again. It's amazing to have you on, Ken, because I remember watching you and thinking you're a legend, and you're talking about Hall of Famers playing. It's quite fun to chat football with you, Ken. So again, thank you. We got Ken Lanier here, Broncos legend, talking football with Broncos country. So thank you for being here again. We got Phil coming in saying he loved watching you. Thanks for the great memories, Buck on Broncos for Life. Phil's a regular on here. We really appreciate him jumping in with the stars from Facebook and any questions you got, throw it out there. I have a couple questions for you, but I'm going to start with the offensive line. So, I mean, obviously there's been some great continuity for the last couple of years, really not too many injuries on the Broncos offensive line. So obviously that is important, but can you talk about what the continuity on the offensive line means, having people together for a long time?
Yeah, having people together, just working together, you had to be able to know the next person's thought. Certain people have tendencies that, you had to fill in just like they fill in on your tendencies of doing things a certain way. Some are going to be better at the crossing game, passing people off and taking care of the situation at hand. A lot of times I don't see with the game today, there's times where you get in certain schemes and basically you're going to have to block two people. You just can't take one. You're going to have to step down and take the inside away, and if somebody's looping around, and if you don't feel the bump from your guard, you got to kind of just get in the way, slow him down so the quarterback can, either get away or give him time to get the ball off. But, that's a lot of things that it takes time to develop, that sixth sense that somebody's coming, and you just can't stay locked on giving ground. You have to be able to just see the other person and basically block two.
Yeah, and that's something that people that kind of do these offensive line grades and stuff now, they don't want to. A lot of them don't understand what's happening. Like that's something that people wouldn't really know. It probably looks like, oh, you didn't do a great job blocking, but yeah, you blocked two people and the ball got out of the quarterback's hands.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's stuff people don't really ever get to see or know about. So that's a great point that you had there, Ken. Thank you for that. So my second question, when you look at this Broncos offensive line, pretty good across the board. People have been talking about Luke Wattenberg kind of being the weak link. What are your feelings on Luke Wattenberg, and what are your feelings on moving into 2025 season with his second year? Do you think he's going to be, adequate or even better? Or what are your feelings when you watch him?
And Luke was the center, right?
Yeah, the center.
Yeah. I thought he played really good. Last year I thought he played good. I didn't see a lot of blatant mistakes.
Okay.
he was in there. Plus, he had two all pro guards next to him. But I thought he had a good season, and I'm
Okay.
just looking for more, more out of him this year because it's going to be his third year, but it'll be his second year on the field and under the same system. You got to take in consideration there was a lot of different systems that were going on, different coaching staff. He has the same coach, so I'm looking for good things to come out of him.
Okay. Yeah, I am too. I'm hopeful, but it was like last year. It was Cushenberry had finally come into his own, and
Right.
then he left in free agency because it takes a while for these young offensive linemen to develop. And now Wattenberg is getting his shot, and I think he's an unrestricted free agent. So, where do you think that the Broncos are probably going to have to fill that void in the draft this year to get somebody ready to go for Wattenberg, knowing he's going to probably be leaving soon?
I mean, if it hadn't happened yet, he'd probably still be here.
Okay.
But you can never tell. There's a lot of things that can happen in between now and when the big decisions have to be made. You got the draft coming up. I don't know how deep they are on offensive line, but it's one of those things that you have to trust in your scouting department and look at the list that they have and what how your game is being played. You have to have somebody that can adapt to the way you play, your style of a game and everything.
Yeah. Well, and there's always somebody ready to replace you. I mean, that's why, and it's not just impressive that you played every game for, 11 straight seasons because of, injuries or whatnot, but there's always somebody coming in that, wants to take your place. So it's impressive, but you always got to keep getting better and better. What are some of the drills and how did you take care of yourself through that whole time to stay on the field for as long as you did?
My motto was do the best that I could. There were games that, we won the game and I just wasn't satisfied with my play. There's games that we lost, but I was satisfied with my play. I always played the game it's between me and the man in front of me, doing my responsibility. There's a lot of things that I didn't have the upper body strength, but I had the lower body strength, and a lot of times my coach would say, if we can get you to play off of two legs, you'd be hell on wheels. A lot of times you can see me skipping on one leg and I'm still blocking the guy. So, it was just a matter of pride. Pride. I played through injuries. I didn't play through any broken things or anything like that, but injuries I played through, and it was just a different mindset. That you don't see that, nowadays as much as you did back then.
Yeah.
And I'm talking all natural too. I'm not talking about steroids or shots or anything like that. No, I never did that. No.
Yeah, you had a high pain tolerance and were able to go out there.
Must have, yeah.
Yeah. I've got a question here from James jumping in. And he wants to know what it was like playing the old Cleveland Stadium against those Browns. And, it's funny because I remember when I jumped on the show with you way back with Gil, we were talking, you were from Ohio, you shunned Ohio State, you went to Florida State, then you came to the Broncos and you went and you beat the Browns, those three roads to the Super Bowl. I mean, I would imagine Cleveland was pretty disappointed that you didn't stick around Ohio. So what was it like playing in those?
That stadium was horrible. The locker room was the size of 20 by 30, if that, it seemed like. And you got everybody crowded in there. You had steps you had to go down, and steps you had to come back up. The field was terrible. It was like cow pasture. The grass was so high. The big, thick blades of grass. And then on top of that, you had the dog pound.
Yeah.
And the dog pound was full of dogs in it that were mad at the owners because they were throwing batteries at us. They were throwing milk bones. They were throwing cow shank shoulder shanks at us.
Whoa.
And it was crazy. So that one game we had to switch sides, So we were going, I think it was to the East Stadium, I think it was. And they had to flip us because they were throwing milk bones, everything you could think of. So we had to turn around and go to the other end zone because it was too dangerous,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get hit?
Yeah, the worst thing is the milk bones, those dog milk bones, because when they hit your face mask, they would shatter, they'd get all in your eyes,
Oh,
they would
man.
throw batteries, you name it, man. It was just wow.
There was no rules back then. Now you throw something on the field, you get in trouble. Back then, that's hardcore. I mean, yeah, I heard stories. I knew they threw batteries in the milk. I didn't know about the shoulder
oh yeah,
steak or whatever.
Big old bone coming at you. It's like
that's nuts, man. Well, it's nice that
a line coach got hit. I think it was Kansas City. Got hit with a fifth bottle.
Oh, geez.
So
yeah. Nowadays they get kicked out for life for doing something like that. But back then that was just part of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's a good thing you sent them home losers in those AFC Championship games.
Yeah.
Because that was worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember one game in my rookie year, and nobody told me. Dan Fouts, Don Ariel, or whatever. They had a cannon that they would shoot off every time they scored. Nobody told me about that cannon. So when it went off, I was looking around, and with Fouts, it was going off all day long. So,
yeah. Oh man, yeah. Those were the Air Coryell days with the high flying offense. So they scored a time or two for sure.
Yeah,
yeah. So welcome in everybody. In case you just joined, we got Broncos legend Ken Lanier, one of the best offensive tackles to ever suit up in the orange and blue with us tonight. Got a few more questions we're going to jump to here. I've got one from Phil McLaughlin coming in asking, what was your impression of Nix's first year? What do you feel is the most needed? And then the second question is, what's the most needed position for the team next year?
I thought he had a solid first year. Once he got the rolling, and once him and Peyton had their little spat on the sideline, and they figured out he wasn't going to be a pushover. He's a hardworking kid. He has the skills. We just got to get him set up where he can have the receiver and the talents that, matches his, where, we'll be unstoppable.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to a better next season because there are some times where you get that sophomore slump, so to speak, for quarterbacks. Yeah. But when I look at Bo Nix, his work ethic and the way he handles himself, they had to kick him out of the building after the season was over. Like Sean Payton's like, you need to go home. So, take some time off. So I'm looking for a better season just based on his work ethic and things like that. So,
and don't forget, that's going to give other teams time to study too. So they'll be able to be more prepared for him. I mean, they had all last year, but still they're going to be breaking down film from all last year over and over again. So they'll find what buttons that they can push or what have you. So it's up for our coaches to come and be able to counteract what people have seen that is a weakness for him.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That's great insight, Ken. Appreciate that. We got Chad's coming in with a super chat. Thank you so much, Chad, saying, Ken, legend, what was your most memorable win and the most memorable loss as a Bronco?
Most memorable win was my first game that I started at Mile High Stadium against the Cleveland Browns, and that was my rookie year. So, I had an outstanding game. I had the game ball for that. And then after that time, they figured out that, hey, this kid can play. So they started playing me more. So that the most memorable game was my first game. Memorable loss, I think, would be the 3 Super Bowls. We lost all three, and it's not like we lost. We lost. I mean, everybody was setting records on us.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, I'll tell you, when I go back and I remember watching that first Super Bowl against the Giants.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I still say that if the few plays had gone the right way in that first half, you would have won that game. Because there was John Elway missed Steve Watson all alone in the end zone, tried to get it into Orson Mobley and double covered, missed him. That big error in the replay where they first used the replay and they botched it. That was another one, and then trying to run right at the Giants there at the 1 yard line. Had those plays worked out, I still think the Broncos would have won that. It would have been a much different story. We've been talking about that Super Bowl victory for sure. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, definitely.
Do you, when you look back at that, do you kind of see the same thing, or I'm off a little bit?
Yeah, I forgot about the Watson open in the end zone, but we tried to run at him on the inside, and Carson and everybody, they just stacked it up, So
I mean that was one of the best linebacking crew in probably the history of the NFL. So I mean it's a tough task to try and punch it in regardless. So but yeah, I mean, we won't talk too much more about it. Bring back some old memories, but we got another comment from Deanna Hendry coming in. Super chat. Thank you for coming in, Deanna. Asking, which team did you hate to play against?
I think it was mostly field conditions. I hated playing the Rams early when they were at Anaheim, because they had the baseball field. So you had the dust, and it was a baseball field. So it was hard, and you had to crush brick, so it would always cut you up and everything. I just hated that. And then Seattle, I mean, you just couldn't hear yourself think. And John's voice was at a pitch that it blended in with the crowd noise. Didn't have any trouble hearing Steve DeBerg, but John, we had trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny that you mentioned that, because I was talking about Steve DeBerg. You were there when he had in Elway's rookie season where he had to use a amplifier strapped to his back to make the calls. Do you remember that, where he hurt his throat?
Who, DeBerg?
DeBerg.
What game was it?
It was that first game of Elway's career in 1983. He got pulled, and Steve DeBerg had to go out there he has this big amplifier strapped to his shoulder pads. I thought that was the craziest thing, like letting them go out there with an amplifier so he could make the calls at the line, because his voice was gone from getting hit in the throat.
Wow. I don't remember that one. I got to look that one back up. Yeah.
I'll send you a picture. I have a picture of it. It's like got a big box under his chest, under his pads. I would never allow that kind of stuff now.
Yeah, I know.
We got Joe coming in saying, really appreciate you jumping on. We all do. Thank you so much for being here. Amazing to hear from a Broncos legend. So thank you, Joe, and you too. We got Ken Lanier with us, going through old stuff and new stuff. We're talking old Broncos, playing days, and we're talking about the current Broncos. So going back to the current Broncos, I know we're jumping around a little bit, but I would just, what do you see, when you look at the team after these free agent pickups, where do you see that they need to shore up some weaknesses? What's their big weakness you think they have right now?
I think right now at running back, they had to find somebody that's going to be a front runner that can run the ball, tote the ball, a short yardage guy. We don't have that, somebody that, if you hand it off, that 9 times out of 10, he's going to get that extra yard or 2 yards, for the first down, and just hoping that our receivers come together and gel, and get that taken care of. And I think we'll be pretty good, also defensively, just getting the linebacker straight. We solidified the defensive line, and we had a good one, but now, on paper, we have an outstanding defensive line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I was surprised how good the defensive line was last year. I think Zach Allen was I don't think anybody saw that coming. He had a monster year last year. Jonathan Franklin Myers came in and played exceptionally well. The only thing that worries me is, I'd like them to get a little bit younger in some of those areas. DJ Jones is getting a little bit older. I mean, obviously he's not old. I'm old. He's not, but in football years, so it'd be nice to pick up a big, wide body young guy who can step in, in next year or so when DJ Jones.
Now, how old is Roach then?
Oh yeah, Malcolm Roach, another surprise. He's still a young guy as well too.
Right.
So
we got Roach and the other kid that came from the USFL or whatever.
Oh yeah, Dondre Tillman came in. Yeah, edge rusher. Right. That he had a big year as well, along with Luther Ellis's kid, Jacob.
Ellis. We got Jacob or John. We have some youth there. We have some depth in the defensive line.
Definitely.
And that show, and then Benito, he just really came on,
Yes.
Because that was last year his second year or third year.
Last year was his third year. Benito, he kind of popped in his third year. Yeah. That's another player who has done everything that they've asked him to do. He got stronger. He got a little bit better against a run. He he put more pass rush moves into his repertoire, so to speak. And I'm looking for another big season. And I think he's a priority, hopefully to get a deal done before another big season when it becomes very expensive to keep him around. So.
Yeah. We had outside linebackers that were just crazy good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we've got another question come back in from Zachary. Another question for you, and it is, in your opinion, is our secondary the no-fly zone 2.0, which is referring to that great, obviously, defense in 2015, the secondary with Talib and T.J. Ward and Chris Harris Jr. and those folks. What do you think about our secondary?
I think they have a chance. I mean, we got to get Moss going. He was coming off an injury, so hopefully he has the bugs out, from that injury for this year. Once we get Moss solidified, and we got the All-Pro Defensive Player of the Year on the other side, and then hopefully with the new safety, we had safeties that could play, but when you have somebody that's coming downhill, that's gonna just, as John Madden said, put snot bubbles on your helmet. That's gonna be interesting.
Yeah.
And then I think they were talking about moving Sanders inside now. The kid from Arkansas.
Drew Sanders. He started out as inside linebacker, then they put him at edge, and now they're bringing him back. And he is a very athletic, rangy type of player that just needs to develop a little more. I think maybe moving him around might have stunted that development a little bit. So maybe can you talk to us a little bit about that? Not necessarily with inside linebacker, but does it, if you were to be moved from left to right or on the offensive line, how does that affect your development?
It kind of does affect it, but I think he was mainly an inside linebacker at Arkansas.
Right.
So he's used to the position, but like you said, then he got moved outside. But what was his injury? Was it a knee or Achilles?
I'm drawing a blank. I think he hurt his knee, I believe, but I'd have to look it up.
Yeah. So you got to get your bearings back on getting used to the retread knee, and everything, and get used to being hit again. So sometimes it takes you a while. Sometimes certain people, it doesn't bother them. They go out and play through it.
It was actually an torn Achilles tendon.
Right. Okay.
In 2024. Yeah.
A
little bit more serious than an ACL. I think the Achilles are a little harder to come back from.
Yeah, especially for a linebacker, because you're always straining and digging in and, arching your back as far as taking the blows and everything. Okay. So it's a lot of stress on your lower legs and everything.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, Did you? So speaking of switching back and forth, did you ever play left tackle or was it strictly right tackle?
They tried it, but I just mentally I wasn't having it in my head. I wanted to
Okay.
do it right, so I just excelled at right. I
Okay.
did go back and forth in college.
Okay.
I was the weak side tackle. So some plays I was on the left side, some plays I was on the right side.
Okay.
But I was more dominant on the right side.
Is that what is that? I mean, when you say you're more dominant on the right side, as far as how you move, it's easier to move on the right side for you, or is it because you played more there, or how does that?
And for me, it was just easier. I was just more. It was a natural fit,
Okay.
because back then that was at the cusp where if you played left, then you had to put your left hand down. If you played right, you had to put your right hand down. So
Okay.
and it just the shifting and stuff. I just put that mental block.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, I mean, nowadays it used to be they would line up maybe their premier pass rusher on the left, on the left tackle. Today, I mean, I think it doesn't matter. They've got premier pass rushers on both sides, and did they do that as much as I'm remembering it back then, or did they? I mean, obviously, you talked about Reggie White. Playing up against him, he came at you, from that side. But am I remembering that incorrectly? Did they predominantly get their premier pass rusher over the left tackle, or were they moving around?
It was always the left tackle, because not always, but because the left tackle was the blind side for the quarterback. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So I had Tillman. Tillman was New England. I had 56 for the Giants, Lawrence Taylor.
Yep.
I had Greg Townsend, Green for Seattle.
Okay.
And then what was the one for Kansas City? Art Steele, and the one that lost his life in a car accident.
Derek Thomas.
Thomas,
yep.
Yeah. So
yeah, those are some premier pass rushers.
yeah, definitely.
I've got one more question coming in here from Todd Ossendorf, asking you, how do you rank this current Broncos O-line? So I would imagine, you think they rank in the top 10 this year, top 5 across the NFL?
We had to see how it plays out, because I'm sure there's going to be some moves here and there. It'd be nice if they did keep the line that they have, then they could be in the top 5. But I'm sure something's going to happen where somebody's going to get shifted around or traded at the last minute or something like that, But we have a pretty good nucleus of good young and old players that, we should be ready, locked and loaded to go.
Gotcha. Yeah, perfect. So for those of you joining, we have Ken Lanier here, Broncos legend, joined the show. It's been a real pleasure having you here, Ken. I really appreciate it. One more final question, and then I think we'll probably wrap the show up unless we get some more of these more live chat questions coming in. Mm-hmm. When you looked at the Broncos running game last year, I mean, it was for all intents and purposes, it was pretty ineffective. I mean, they struggled to get a running game going. What would you attribute to that kind of lack of success? Offensive line, running back, kind of scheme. What did you see when you watched those games that just was the struggle?
I think a lot of it was scheme, but it seemed like to me, I don't know, that 33 wasn't running as hard as his style was taken away from him by losing 45,000 for lowering your head. I mean, he would come in, and he would lower his head and run through people, and when you keep getting fined 45,000 for doing that, I think that kind of messed with him. I don't think it was his injuries that were messing with him, but you just noticed, same thing, once he started getting in his groove, he would tuck the ball and, he'd be that little bowling ball and he's running through the holes. And then, you get hit for 45,000 a couple of times. That's 90,000. It's like it kind of messes with your style. that's what I kind of attributed to, because a lot of times it just didn't seem like he was hitting the holes that quick. You know,
Okay.
he was timid to hit the holes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about that, but it can, you can change your playing style when you keep getting those fines. So especially with hard hitting safeties, looking back at Steve Atwater and Dennis Smith, they probably get suspended for all the hits that they were laying on people back in the day. You just can't do it anymore.
Yeah. I used to call them the plate brothers, because every last one of them had a plate where they broke their arm. Dennis broke his arm. Mike Harden broke his arm. Steve Foley had broken his arm. Yeah.
Wow.
On and on.
From hitting so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, Ken, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for being here. You're welcome anytime. If you want to jump back on during the season, just let me know. Really appreciate it. I will get you that picture of Steve DeBerg wearing that amplifier. I'll send it to you after the show. But
all right.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody in the chat. It's been great. I know Luke couldn't be here. I'm sure he misses not being able to chat with you, Ken. But again, thank you very much. And thank you for everyone in Broncos country that joined to listen to Ken Lanier, Broncos legend, one of the best offensive tackles ever in the orange and blue. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And have a great evening.
All right. You too.